So we have some incredible news on the current efforts to remove suppressors and short-barreled rifles from the NFA nationwide. The complete version of the Hearing Protection Act just passed the House, and now we have a chance to make historic NFA changes as this heads to the Senate. So let's break down what is happening right now. Before we jump into this video, I just ask that if you guys support this type of 2A content, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, just drop a positive comment down below because that helps to tell the algorithm that you appreciate this type of 2A content. And then please, the call to action for this video is to contact your representatives, call your senators and tell them that you support the HPA and also the SHORT Act. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, in this video we're going to be talking about a big victory that we just got in the 2A community. And that's because the House just passed the big beautiful bill, the H.R. 1 bill, and that is massive in itself. But one of the big things for the 2A community is that the Hearing Protection Act in its full original version was also included in that and was passed. Like I said, one of the big things that we got also in this and why it's a huge victory for us is the full original version of the HPA was included, not the version that was modified in the House Ways and Means Committee that simply removed the NFA tax. The Hearing Protection Act that passed is the full original version which aims to remove suppressors from the NFA, eliminate the unconstitutional registry, deregulate the manufacturing of suppressors, and prevent states from taxing suppressors as well. As many of you may recall, the HPA along with the SHORT Act were originally in the House Ways and Means Committee in the House. But unfortunately, rhinos in that committee modified the HPA to only remove the NFA's tax. They took it from a $200 tax to a $0 tax. Also, they removed the SHORT Act from consideration. Rhinos on the committee tried to sell that modified HPA as a big victory, but really they just gutted the bill and only removed the NFA tax. However, through all the noise that we made here on the channel and other channels and all the 2A organizations and everyone who got behind this, through our efforts, all the community made the HPA actually included in the big beautiful bill, and it went back to the full original form. Last night, the big beautiful bill passed with a vote of 215 to 214, and the full original version of the HPA was included. This was a big victory for the community and shows that our voices directly impacted this effort to get the HPA back in, added into that effort, and originally passed in that original form. However, we still have a lot of work to do to get the HPA passed in the Senate, and to potentially get the SHORT Act added back in, and you potentially get it passed in the Senate. Now, for those who don't know what the SHORT Act is, and maybe what the HPA is, you know for those not aware, the SHORT Act would remove the term short-barreled rifle and other terms from the definition of a firearm in Section 5845 of the NFA. The effect of that would be that for the purposes of the NFA, short-barreled shotguns, short-barreled rifles, and other firearms would no longer be regulated as NFA items. This bill also adds in a section where it makes it so that your lawful purchase of an SBR through a gun store with a background check would really be all that would be needed, and that's all that would really be required. You would not have to jump through all the NFA restrictions. The SHORT Act also makes it so that federally and at a state level, no tax can be imposed against the purchase and possession of any SBRs or SBSs. Now that would be huge because not only would it end federal enforcement and taxation on SBRs, but it would also block states from putting in place similar types of restrictions. It would also have the downstream impact of opening up bigger avenues to challenge state bans on SBRs and suppressors, since those anti-gun states can no longer lean on the whole argument that those items are dangerous and unusual and that they're regulated under the NFA. And since they're regulated as NFA items, they are clearly dangerous and unusual items. The NFA will no longer regulate those items, and the ownership numbers will likely explode in response to that. And that will bring these items even more clearly into common use territory and destroy a lot of the arguments that were made by anti-gun states and why they needed to regulate SBSs and suppressors. Finally, one of the big things that the SHORT Act would do is it would change the language to where the ATF would need to destroy all records on registered SBRs and SBSs, so they would eliminate the registry. Again, that is huge for a lot of people. Now, the Hearing Protection Act, which passed last night along in the House with the big beautiful bill, the language was changed back into the original form, and the language there that was passed essentially changes the statutory language where there will be no tax, registration, possession or transportation restrictions under federal laws, and all of those will have no force in effect. Also, again important for the bill is that it would remove the federal restrictions and language that would have the downstream impact on states that have built-in suppressor bans, treating these as dangerous and unusual items, trying to lean on the NFA to justify their state bans. It would open up more avenues in those lawsuits against state bans on suppressors. And again, one of the cool things about the HPA, like the Short Act, is it requires the Attorney General to destroy all of those registry records. Now, like I mentioned, after the House Ways and Means Committee modified the HPA to only remove the NFA tax requirement and the Short Act was removed from consideration, there was a tremendous amount of pushback from the community. Our efforts now have directly impacted this, and we got the full original version of the HPA added back into the big beautiful bill, and it passed last night. Of course, there were a ton of individuals in the House, anti-gunners who pushed back against this. You know, there were representatives like Nancy Pelosi who talked about how insane it was that suppressors would be deregulated and how dangerous that would be to the public safety. And then you had representatives like Representative Maxwell who lied about how the HPA removes all restrictions and, they would be completely unregulated, which of course that's not true. Instead, the HPA simply treats suppressors like any other firearm, and you would still need to get a 4473 background check to purchase them from a gun store. But despite all the pearl clutching and, anti-gun arguments that were made in the House last night, the HPA passed along with the big, beautiful bill. Now, as this heads to the Senate, we need to keep the pressure on our senators to keep the HPA included in the budget and make a big push to also get the Short Act included back in as well. The Short Act being amended back in might be a long shot. A lot of people are saying that that's a stretch, but they also said that about the HPA. Maybe senators, don't have an appetite for that. But we really only need one senator to step up to propose the Short Act be added back in, and then we can have all of our pressure put back on all these senators to get that language added back in and passed like we did with the HPA. Gun owners now have a huge opportunity to finally end all this blatant infringement on our constitutional rights, and strike a major blow to the NFA if we can get both the HPA and the Short Act passed and on Trump's desk and signed into law. So once again, it's on all of us to put pressure on our representatives in the Senate. This will now head to the Senate Budget Committee, where we're going to have the chance to push for our pro-gun senators to step up and, protect the HPA, add back in the Short Act. But again, we need to make our calls. We need to put pressure on them and let them know that they not only need to continue to pass the HPA in the full original version, but put pressure on them to also include the Short Act. We definitely don't want to lose this once-in-a-generation opportunity to gut the NFA once and for all. So I need everyone watching this video right now to call your senators at least once a day and tell them that you support the HPA in this full original form, and you also support the Short Act, and you want that included back in with the reconciliation effort. So if you don't know who your senators are, which you should know, but if you don't, I will leave a link down below where you can find out who they are. And then I need you to call them at 202-224-3121, and that's going to be the Capitol switchboard. You're going to ask for your senator's office, and then you're going to leave them a message. Again, the number is 202-224-3121. Call them. Tell them that you support the full removal of suppressors and SBRs, you support the HPA, you support the Short Act, and you want these passed along with the big, beautiful bill. So that's what's currently going on with the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act. We got a big victory with the full version of the HPA included back in, and, we have an opportunity to, make a huge change to the NFA, and we have an opportunity to make an even bigger change if we can get the Short Act added back in. Flood their phones, flood their emails, and let your voices be heard. This is the best chance we've had in a really long time to make huge, sweeping nationwide change and would open up a lot of doors for states as well who have statewide bans on suppressors and SBRs. So that's where we currently stand. The HPA was passed in the House along with the big, beautiful bill. Now this is heading to the Senate. It's going to head to the Budget Committee, and we need to make our voices heard and continue the pressure to protect the HPA, keep it back in, and potentially get the Short Act added in as well. So as more information as it develops, I will let you guys know. But as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.